Okay, the project for this afternoon is to build a couple of rolling sawhorses. So I've got this thing I'm working on and I'm constantly having to move it around the garage. It's mounted on a couple of these plastic sawhorses, which seem like a good idea because they're collapsible, they're easy to store, but I really don't like them. They've actually collapsed under the weight of that thing one time and it only weighs like 150 pounds. So I need something that's a lot more rugged, something I can move around the garage. So I built this workbench a couple of years ago. I did a video on it. If you want to see it, there's a video on my channel. It's a collapsible workbench that has these caster wheels, which work really good. So it's easy to push this thing around the garage and move it wherever I need to. Or I can collapse it and put it against the wall if I want to. So I want a sawhorse that's just like that, something that I can move it, lock it in place, and it's sturdy. All right, so I got these pre-built sawhorse kits at Lowe's. I bought 2 of them. They're Project Source brand. They were $13 each. And you get 2 of these metal brackets in one kit. So the way this works is you put a 2x4 in there, a 2x4 in there, and those are your legs. Then 1 across the top, and then you got a sawhorse for 2 out of 2 of these. So I've got these caster wheels that I had left over from another project. I think they're $4 or $5 each. You need some screws, which, you know, $5 or $6 for screws. The 2 of those, 13 each, was $26. Then you need at least 5 2x4s. If you're gonna make a higher sawhorse, you need 6 2x4s. I'm gonna make one that's about the same height as that over there, so I only need 5 2x4s. Then you need some runners to go across the bottom. So I've got a couple of scrap pieces here I'm gonna use for the runners that go across the bottom I mount the wheels on. You need a circular saw and a drill with drill bits, or with a screwdriver bit. So this should take about 25 to 30 minutes. So I'm gonna build it and let's see how it works. Okay, here's how these sawhorse kits work. So you got one of these brackets. They're made for a 2x4. You slip a 2x4 into it. You can fold it up to store it, or you can fold it out to use it. And you don't have to make the horizontal piece across the top a 2x4. You can make, if you want a wider A-frame, you can make that a more narrow piece of wood. And the great thing about this is, you see these sawhorses, their width is set, but when you make a custom sawhorse, you can make them as wide as you want to. So if you need something really wide, like say 6 feet, you can do it. Anyhow, I've already measured this, and so I want my sawhorses to be a little bit higher than this. So I'm gonna make my legs 30 inches high. And then on top of that, I've got 3 inches for my caster wheel. And then the caster wheel, on the very bottom of the sawhorse, the caster wheel is going to set on like that. So that's going to add about another 1.5 inches. So after I finish cutting and putting everything together, I should bring this thing up about 3 to 4 inches, probably 4 inches, where it's more comfortable for me to work on it. All right, so let's cut the 30-inch 2x4s and get started. Okay, I got my 4 30-inch 2x4 legs cut, and that took maybe 5 minutes, and that was with me taking a water break, so it's real quick to do that. Okay, I got all the legs put together, so let me show you how this works. So you set up both legs on a sawhorse, straight up. Well, not exactly straight, but don't spread it too wide. You have to put your 2x4 in the jaws of each sawhorse, and you may have to push down on it. Expand your leg a little bit, and then do the other one. And expand your leg. And then go back and push your legs out to the necessary width. Now, let me show you something about these pre-made sawhorse brackets. These have these teeth that will grab your 2x4 and grip it. So, as you spread this out, the teeth on the end are going to dig into it, hold it steady. Then you put screws on both your brackets, and I'm going to put a couple of screws on each end also, and then I'm going to screw the bracket into the top 2x4. All right, so what I need to do now is measure how wide I want it, and then cut some braces to put on the sides to keep it from folding in while I'm using it. Okay, the typical sawhorse is 36 inches wide. I've got a very specific use case for this, so I want these 33 inches wide. So I've got to cut this piece and another piece for the top boards, and then cut the 19-inch pieces for the base. We'll get all that cut, screwed in place, and then put the casters on and see how it works. Okay, I want the bottom of each set of legs to be 18 inches wide. So what I'm going to do is cut a couple of runners to put across the bottom that are exactly 18, probably a little bit over 18. So I'll cut 2 pieces that are each 19 inches, and I'll put it underneath the leg, and that's what we'll mount the casters on. Okay, so I've got to put the bottom of the A-frame on this runner board the casters are going to be mounted onto. So this is probably the hardest part of this whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I cut this temporary piece of wood. I'm going to put right here, and I'm going to secure both the bottom 2x4 and the outside leg from the side. Then I can turn it upside down, and I'm going to drill into the legs from the bottom. I'm going to put 2 screws in each side. So the first thing to do is to drill a pilot hole right here. And then one in the 2x4 at the bottom. Put another one down here. I'm going to go ahead and secure this in, and then I'm going to measure that end. All right. All right, so I've got this end in place, and this is correct on this end. Now I'm going to secure that end. Okay, the bottom of the A-frame is in place. Before I turn it upside down, I'm going to put a couple of screws in the top just to hold everything together solid. Okay, so I got the screws put in one end. I've got the base secured, so we're going to turn it upside down now and put some screws on the bottom of the A-frame. All right. It's so much easier to have a pilot hole. Ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, the sawhorse is completely assembled. I've got the base screwed in place onto the A-frame. I've got these screwed in. What I'm going to do now, just to keep the sawhorse from running the risk of buckling, because when it's on the caster wheels spin, and I don't want the legs to accidentally have the tendency to go inside or to buckle outside. So I'm going to put another piece of 2x4 from here to here, and that's going to be slightly shorter than the top, which is 36. So I'm going to make this 35 inches long. That'll make sure that these vertical pieces stay vertical and they don't have the tendency to fold in. Okay, while I was cutting or screwing this cross member in place, the one that goes between the 2 A-frames, the wood started to crack, and the crack goes about 6 inches deep. So what I'm going to do is put wood glue in the crack, a lot of wood glue. I'm going to put a couple of screws in that come from the outside inward to hold the crack closed. And I'm going to clamp it with a Sherwin clamp and then let it set overnight. And between the glue and the screws, it ought to seal that crack up pretty good, and hopefully this board will be okay. The other screw over here is fine. It's just this one screw that caused it to crack. And that's because the screw has an angled head on it, and I went too far down into the wood, and so it's my fault. But I think I can fix it without having to use another piece of wood. Okay, both the sawhorses are put together, and now I've just got to put the caster wheels on. So let's turn them over and do that. Okay, I got a sawhorse turned upside down here, so let's put the caster wheel in place, mark the holes. Drill some pilot holes and and put the screws in. And I'm drilling pilot holes because I don't want to run the risk of cracking this board like I cracked the last one. Okay, time to get finished. So now it's the next day. I had to let the glue dry on this piece of board overnight where this crack was. So it's dried and looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead now and put on the last 4 caster wheels. Okay, that's all the caster wheels. So let's check it out. Awesome. That's exactly what I want. All right, so I've got a little bit of wood left over, so what I'm going to do is put a couple of more stiffeners across each end of the 2 sawhorses and probably put one more stiffener from end to end, and that'll just give it a little bit of extra strength. Also, I forgot to mention, these caster wheels are rated for 200 pounds each. So I've got 4 caster wheels. That ought to easily handle the amount of weight that I'm going to put on these sawhorses. All right, let's put the stiffeners on and finish this up. Okay, I got the 4 side pieces cut, so now what I'm going to do is line them up to the mark I made on the side and then mark the piece under here. So I'm going to cut off that edge and this edge so that it'll follow the contour of the A-frame. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so I cut one of them, so here's the thing. I've got 4 pieces here that all have to be cut the same way, so I can use the one I cut to mark the rest, and then I don't have to measure them. So what you do is line up the ends. And this doesn't have to be completely perfect. I mean, it's just a sawhorse, right? You're not building a bookshelf or something for your house. So use the first one to mark the second one. And then do it again to mark the next one. And then the last one. And since I've already got my saw at the right angle to cut this piece off, I don't have to reset the saw every time. Okay, I got these pieces cut, so I'm going to put those on the inside of the A-frame. If I put them on the inside, then I can build a shelf that stretches across them, and that'll give me more storage on the sawhorses. So let's get those put in. Okay, so I marked the inside of the A-frame boards. I want the stiffener to be exactly 10 inches from the bottom. So I measure with my ruler, made 2 marks exactly 10 inches. So let's position this piece. Make sure it looks good. Yep. Looks great. So I'm going to drill a pilot hole, or 2 pilot holes on each side. And I do that because I don't want to split the board. Okay, I got the stiffeners cut and screwed in place, and they're on the A-frame. So not only will they give me a place for a shelf, they actually hold the A-frame together. I've got 2 screws in the bottom of each one that hold the A-frame onto this board. I wanted some extra strength, so these pieces actually hold the A-frame together a little bit better. So I'm going to do one more thing. I've got 1 2x4 left. I bought 5 2x4s and I only used 4. Plus I had a couple of scrap pieces, so that helped me out too. This is a scrap piece, and I think the other one is also. Anyhow, I've got one 2x4 left, so what I'm going to do is cut one more piece and put along the outside to give me some extra stiffeners for it moving side to side. I don't want the A-frame to end up tilting either way as I move it on the caster wheels. So I'll put a board from here to here and another one on the other sawhorse. Okay, so I got these pieces cut. They were 35 inches long. I'm going to go ahead and put one on each of the sides of the A-frame. And I got a couple of clamps. I'll hold them in place with clamps while I screw them just to make sure they don't slip. So there's that one. And I'm going to line these up exactly with the top of the side supports. All right. That one. Okay. I'm actually not going to drill a pilot hole on these. I don't think it's necessary. All right, there's one. Let's do the other. Okay, the sawhorses are done. They came out great, and I'm really happy with them. They're extra rugged, and you may think they're over-engineered, and they really are. I wanted them extra strong because they're going to hold a lot of weight. And the thing that I'm going to use these for is pretty expensive, so I don't want to take a chance of it falling and being damaged. So, yeah, I did over-engineer them. I think altogether I've got about $60 invested. I had to go back and buy 2 more caster wheels because 2 of the wheels I had didn't work right. Then I had to buy more screws. Altogether that was about $12. So I think my total expense here is between $60 and $65. If you go and you buy something equivalent to this at one of the big box stores, you're going to easily pay $100. Okay, this is why I built the sawhorses, so I can take this thing and move it around my garage wherever I want to. The garage goes down here towards the door, so it tends to try and slide downhill, but I can take this thing and move it around. It's really easy to move. This weighs probably around 150 to 175 pounds, and it moves around great. And another reason I built it, or I built the sawhorses, is because I want this thing higher. The other sawhorses were just too low. This is perfect. When I'm working on it, I've got something like this circuit board sitting on here, and I want to be able to work on it without having to bend over. With the other sawhorses, I was always having to bend over like that to work on it, and now it's up at nearly chest level, which is perfect. So that's the thing to remember. If you're going to build something, build it for your specific use case. It's okay to generalize things, and when I build things, I try and generalize, but for a lot of stuff, I want a very specific use case. And that's what these sawhorses are for. And if I ever want to make them shorter, all I've got to do is take out probably maybe 15 to 20 screws, chop the legs down a little bit, and I can drop them easily a few inches. But for now, it's perfect. Okay, one more thing. When I started the video, I mentioned that I thought the build time would be about 30 minutes. The build time was actually about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Mostly because I had to fix a board that split while I was building the sawhorses. I had to repair it with glue and screws and stuff. And also I decided to go back and add the stiffeners on the A-frame and across the side. So that added probably an extra 20 to 25 minutes. So probably 1.5 hours, maybe a little bit less total build time. But it was well worth it. All right, thanks for watching.